Welcome back to the Stack Shack Sports Show. Today is Tuesday, which means it is our weekly recap of every single game in the NFL. We do this rapid fire while pausing to talk about some of the more important games. First game of the weekend was Pittsburgh versus Baltimore. Big game for Pittsburgh, not so big a game for Baltimore, a game I was expecting Pittsburgh to win, and they did. They got the win. Baltimore's not playing starters necessarily. I mean, some, but they're not playing Lamar Jackson, obviously. They had already locked up their playoff position. Steelers get the win, get into the playoffs. Big win for them. Honestly impressive what Mike Tomlin has done with the team. Getting a team with Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett, and then Kenny Pickett getting hurt. Getting this team into the playoffs in that division. Really, really tough. Now, Joe Burrow injury helps him out a little bit, but heck, Jake Browning played pretty well down the stretch, and the Browns had an injury with Deshaun Watson, and then in comes Joe Flacco, and I mean, in all honesty, it was still a tough division, even with the backup quarterbacks that they, were competing against. So, big win for them. There's some talk this offseason that Mike Tomlin might be moving on. I don't think they're going to fire him. There was rumors they might fire him earlier, but at 10-7, he just made the playoffs. They're not firing him. There was reports today that they are going to keep him if he wants to stay, but there are some rumors that he might want to take a little break from head coaching, maybe go into broadcasting for a little bit, similar to maybe a Sean Payton a couple years ago. So we'll have to keep an eye on that for sure. Moving on to our other Saturday game, Houston Texans. CJ Stroud is the man. This was one of our bets of the week. We got it. We hit it. Very happy with it. This is a situation where, winner gets in, and I'm taking the better quarterback. CJ Stroud. Look at those numbers. Great. Gardner Minshew. I mean, not terrible. Didn't turn the ball over, but just not that good, right? CJ Stroud, from the very beginning, Nico Collins went absolutely off. Big win for the Texans. The Texans are definitely my favorite story in the NFL this year. I mean, first-year head coach, first-year quarterback, and they're in the playoffs at 10-7. Very impressive. Congrats to the Texans. Oh boy, this one. This one was rough. This one was rough to me. Jacksonville loses. What the hell happened to Jacksonville this season? They were a 2 seed at one point with a 98% chance to make the playoffs. I was feeling good about my predictions earlier in the year. And then they just fell apart, and they lose to the Titans, who had nothing to play for. Like, if in the last game, we were looking at Houston and Indianapolis, if Indianapolis wins this and Houston loses, it's like, well, Indianapolis, it was win and get in for them too. They're playing hard. Tennessee had nothing to play for in this game, except to knock off the Jaguars. That was it. Trevor Lawrence was not particularly good. One of the interceptions that was just, batted up ball, really from Evan Ingram not making the catch. So one of the interceptions was not his fault necessarily. Ingram should have caught that. It was a great play by the defensive player to even make that interception. One of the most spectacular interceptions I've seen. But Trevor Lawrence's play on the last 2 plays of the game, the 2 passes he threw to end this game, were pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. And I think we might need to start having a conversation about Trevor Lawrence and how good is he really. Now, I'm not ready to bail. Some people are already bailing on him. This is a Jaguars team that really overachieved last season. They were a disaster earlier with Urban Meyer situation and then the firing halfway. I mean, Urban didn't even make it a season. They were so bad. Then Doug Peterson comes in. And last season, they were fortunate with the absolute collapse of the Chargers. Worst collapse in playoff history. to lose that game. And Trevor Lawrence gets credit for that, and he should. But I think maybe we were a little too quick to crown Trevor as the next coming of a Patrick Mahomes, a Tom Brady, a Joe Burrow. Maybe we were a little too quick on it. Maybe we were too fast to jump on the Jacksonville Jaguars bandwagon. I think they need a little more time to really get locked in. Next season, I think they will be better. We'll see how the offseason treats them, but disappointing years for the Jags. I think we all thought this was the year that they'd make a big jump, and early in the season it looked like they were. But I think at the end of the season you started to see that, Trevor's still inexperienced, he's still young, he's still making mistakes. The defense and offenses are not quite there yet. But the 2 passes to end the game for Trevor are absolutely awful. We're not talking about the Ridley miss, which, watching it live, I thought he had more pressure in his face. He really had an opportunity to make that throw. That was not any throw in the NFL is an impressive throw. The distance, and I can't make that throw. But for an NFL quarterback, you would expect him to hit Ridley on that. But it's the 2 plays, the 3rd down and the 4th down play, where he just sails it over people's heads. Like, there was no chance anybody was catching that ball on 4th down. I don't understand it. I don't care if you throw a pick on 4th down. It's 4th down. That was the game. You had no timeouts. You get the completion or you go home. And you don't make it into the playoffs. Give your guy a chance. It was absolutely pathetic. I just don't understand. I don't understand how you don't at least throw it within a catchable area of somebody. It's 4th down. The game's over if you incomplete that. And he just sails it like 6 yards over his head. There was no chance anybody on the field was catching that ball. Absolutely pathetic. Very disappointed in the way that season ends for Jacksonville. Detroit, Minnesota, not much to talk about here. Detroit is good at home. They played well. Going to be a very fun matchup with Stafford and the Rams going to Detroit. Jared Goff, Stafford showdown after the trade in the playoffs. Stafford going to Detroit, could win his first ever playoff game in Detroit. Pretty exciting, very interesting, great storylines here in the playoffs. And we'll talk about that later in the week, all my predictions for the playoffs. But yeah, Detroit's dangerous at home for sure. This is another game that there's not much to talk about, although the Saints did give us, with this last touchdown to make it 48-17 instead of 41-17, they did give us a little bit to talk about. Jameis was in, and they handed it off to their running back for a touchdown on the 1-yard line when they were supposed to take a knee. Obviously, Falcons are a little pissed off about that. I think it's kind of stupid. These are professionals. Maybe you wouldn't do that in a high school game, but they're handing it off to Jamal Williams, right? Who last season led the league in touchdowns, and this season has really struggled with injuries, has struggled with just not being very productive, and they gave him a touchdown, which is his only touchdown of the season. And apparently it was a team decision, kind of in the huddle. They said, you know what, let's get this guy a touchdown. And personally, I think that's actually kind of cool. I know there's some people saying, you got to get rid of Jameis Winston. This is stupid that he made that decision. But, I don't know. These are professionals. This game didn't matter. It didn't. Neither of these teams are in the playoffs. Okay? And if the Falcons win that game, they're not in the playoffs. Because the Bucs win, right? The Bucs got the win. The game didn't matter. Especially at that point. These are professionals. This isn't a high school game where you're trying to, build each other's confidence, which I think is a little bit overplayed anyways. And you give the ball to a player on your team that you felt deserved a touchdown. He was a great running back last year, has had a really rough year. You're supporting your teammates. You're like, hey, let's get you in the end zone. You led the league in touchdowns last season. Let's put you in the end zone. I think that's cool. I actually thought that was a really cool, like, touching thing to do for a teammate. Hey, we respect what you've been through this season. We want to reward you with a touchdown. The teammates decided. I think that shows a lot of, I don't know, character and how close that locker room is. In a game that really didn't matter, they decided to do something special for a teammate. I think that's kind of cool. Jets, Patriots, who even cares? I don't even care. All right. The Bucks get the win, get in the playoffs. Baker Mayfield got the Bucks to the playoffs. Pretty impressive, honestly. Carolina is terrible. I mean, now I was not a Bryce Young guy, and let's be honest, Baker Mayfield didn't light it up. This is a 9-0 game. This is not a oh boy, this is just not good. But man, is Carolina bad. Bryce Young, I was not a fan of coming out of college. He was electric at Alabama, and he was really good at Alabama. But he just has seemed overwhelmed since the moment he got into the NFL. Now, some of that could be the Panthers personnel. They're not doing him a lot of favors on who he's throwing the ball to and his offensive line, and it's not great. But that pick is not looking so great, especially with what CJ Stroud is doing in not a great position. I mean, we were talking early in the season this year. Go look back at my preseason breakdown of some of CJ Stroud's plays in his debut, where I said, man, this offensive line is so bad, I don't know if CJ Stroud's going to be very productive. They got better as the season went on. That was pretty impressive. But CJ Stroud didn't have a bunch of, like, preseason weapons. Coming into this year, we were not all sitting there going, oh yeah, the Texans are loaded. We'll see if CJ Stroud can play. No. We were all saying about both of these quarterbacks, hey, curb your expectations. They don't have a lot of talent around them. The offensive lines might be suspect. I thought Stroud might be in the worst position. But he showed that you can play. And Bryce Young has not shown that yet, which is unfortunate. Bengals get a win here over the Browns. Not a game that really mattered. Browns aren't playing their starters. The story this season for the Bengals is really slow start with an injured Joe Burrow. Then Joe Burrow really got hurt. Jake Browning came in. Honestly, quite productive. I think Jake Browning has a spot somewhere. Somewhere in the NFL. Somebody's going to need Jake Browning next season. We'll see who it is. See where he ends up. Because he really did play pretty well. That's kind of the story of the Bengals this season. Browns already had locked up their playoff position. The Joe Flacco revenge tour. I don't know. I don't even know what to call it. The Joe Flacco sequel. The 8th sequel. He's back. He's Terminator over there. Pretty impressive. Very excited for the Browns in the playoffs to see what they are going to be able to do. Man, does Green Bay own Chicago? Justin Fields is gone at the end of the year. There's no reason. Chicago, you can't keep him. It's just not working. You got to reset the clock on the contracts. Go get a quarterback, see what you can do. Jordan Love, Packers have found a quarterback. The Packers have found a quarterback. They get into the playoffs, which is exciting with this win. It's kind of wild. The Packers seem to have kind of gone 3 for 3. Favre, Rodgers, Jordan Love. They can all play. Some of them, 2 of them are probably Hall of Famers. We'll see. Jordan Love, this is his first season, so we can't say Hall of Famer yet. But, man, looked good. They're really peaking at the right time. The defense is still pretty atrocious, although the Bears couldn't score on them. And that's another indictment, I think, on Justin Field and the Bears. That's what it is. Cowboys, Commanders. Commanders are not very good. The Cowboys are good. They get the big win, clinch the division, the number 2 seed. Pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. Get to host some playoff games, which is big for the Cowboys. They are much better at home. So that was a big win, especially with the Philadelphia collapse that we'll talk about in a moment here when we get to that game. Raiders, Broncos, this game doesn't really matter. I think it's maybe another example, though, of why I would have, if I was the Raiders, kept the interim head coach. But that's just my opinion. Giants, Eagles. This is the one I just alluded to. Eagles, man, they are stumbling. They get a bit of a break in that they get to go play the Bucs, who are not the best team. Like, the Eagles have a better roster, but the big thing is Jalen Hurts getting hurt in this game, which is why Marcus Mariota's here on the leading of the passing yards. And receiving yards, Watkins is the leading receiver. Why? They didn't have Devontae Smith. He's still dealing with an injury. And A.J. Brown got hurt too. So the Eagles, not only have they been sputtering, I think 1-5 or 1-6 in their last 6 or 7 games, but now they've got a lot of injury problems. Like, everybody's getting hurt. Will they play? Sirianni today sounded optimistic that they would play, but if you don't have Jalen, you don't have AJ, and you don't have Devontae, I think the Bucs are going to get you. Personally, I like the Bucs in that game. I just think the Eagles are spiraling, and I don't think they're going to be able to save it by, next week. Tyrod Taylor, perpetual backup, but I feel like every time he gets in as a backup, he can put up some numbers when he's not hurt. Pretty impressive. Seahawks, Cardinals, not a game that was particularly important for a lot of things, but, Seahawks get the win. Cardinals, I guess they're sticking with Kyler, I don't know what the Seahawks are going to do at quarterback. Geno has not had as good a year as he did last year. We all kind of saw that coming, but it'll be interesting to see what they do in the draft. The Rams get a big win over the Niners. Well, the Niners didn't play anybody. So, there you go. Rams are in the playoffs. Pretty exciting. Niners obviously didn't really care about this game. They already had the bye and the home field advantage locked up, so they're not worried. Rams get a win. Not a lot to talk about there because of everybody sitting. Chiefs, Chargers. Oh, boy. Yeah, Chargers had nothing to play for. The Chiefs really didn't have anything to play for. This is just a kind of a throwaway game. All right, the Chiefs won, but it didn't really do anything. The Sunday night game was very exciting, though. This was bets 2 and 3 of the week. I had 4 bets of the week. I hit 3 of them. Didn't get the 4th. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Buffalo Bills. I said take them over Dolphins. Josh Allen owns the Dolphins. I felt like the Bills had obviously more to play for. Thankfully, the Steelers won, which made the Bills maybe have a little bit more. But then the Jags lost, which got the Bills in the playoffs. So then it became just for the division. But thankfully, that was plenty of motivation to get the number 2 seed, I believe the Bills grabbed up. Josh Allen, terrible in the first half, great in the second half. Tua was... This is the unfortunate part of the Dolphins. I just don't think they do well enough against the good teams. Yes, they will run around. Tyreek Hill can absolutely torch a bad secondary. But when Tua's pressured, when Tua struggles a little bit, they really struggle. And, the last interception wasn't great for Tua. I mean, I wouldn't put it all on him. It just wasn't a good pass. And that's what Tua is. And that's unfortunate. I think you saw the stark contrast between an A and a B plus B quarterback. There you go. Josh Allen can have a terrible first half. He threw 2 terrible picks. I mean, this game should have been blown open way wider, right? If he doesn't throw those interceptions in the end zone and all of that, and have all those turnovers. He had 2 picks and 3 turnovers, right? So there's a fumble in there too. If those don't happen, they probably, give him another couple of touchdowns, and this game is not even close. Was a bit of a sweat for me having them at, I think, -4.5, -3.5, something like that. But they got the win, got a big win. It was great. I also told you Stephon Diggs over in big spots. If we look at more player stats here in the receiving category, it was over under 61. I said he's going over. In these big games, look to Diggs. Leads the team in receptions, tied with Dalton Kincaid, who's really come on, been really impressive. Dawson Knox gets a touchdown, though. They start looking at Diggs, and he shows up in big games. So pretty awesome to win both those bets, both the spread of the Bills and the over on receiving yards. I actually secretly turned it into a parlay of completions, Josh Allen, and over receiving yards on Stephon Diggs. So I hit that one as well, which was a very good feeling. I had a very good Saturday and Sunday. Monday did not go so well. Washington lost by more than 4.5. Although up until the very end of that fourth quarter, it was close. We'll have a full video tomorrow on recapping the college football season and looking ahead to next season, where we'll talk a little bit more about how I felt about that bet. But 3 for 4, I'm going to make this a new series. Every single Friday, we're going to drop a betting video. I love sports betting, so we're going to do it every single Friday. I'm going to release my best bets of the week. It's not necessarily going to be a certain number of them, but it will be whatever I feel like are kind of the locks of the week. Or if there's a really big game that I feel like there's a decent line on, I'll pick those as well. So we'll definitely have some picks coming in for the playoffs this year and this weekend. Looking forward to tomorrow's video on the college football season. Got a lot to talk about there. Big win for Michigan. Dominant on defense. We'll talk about it more tomorrow, and I hope to see you there.